If you have an unquenchable thirst to crush your bucket list, relentlessly pursue your dreams, and live life on your own terms, then turn up the volume and tune in. You're now listening to Zeph and Moses Blacksburg on the Year of Purpose podcast.
This episode of the Year of Purpose is brought to you by our brand new book, Life Rescripted. Find your purpose and design your dream life before the curtains close. If you want to be the first in line to receive a free digital copy from me, all you have to do is head on over to www.liferescriptedbook.com to find out more. What's going on, everybody? This is Zeph and Moses Blacksburg, host of the Year of Purpose podcast, and today I'm joined by Trevor Thomas from the West Coast. We're hanging out today. So great that we can talk all the way across the country with each other. And Trevor is the author of Reminders from the Soul and creator of the Journey Inward Planner and Community, where you can find inspiring quotes and stories, share some of your most meaningful stories and sayings from your life, and find support from like-minded individuals and groups who are interested in self-discovery. He's also an international speaker and coach on creating support and sustainable change. And he's hanging out with me for a little bit. What's going on, Trevor?
Hey, Zephin, it's good to hear from you.
Yeah, man.
It's been great getting to read about your Year of Purpose podcast and just kind of finding out what you're all about. And I'm really glad that you're having me on here today.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, and it's really cool to look back from this point in time, because almost exactly 12 months ago from today was really when my year started. I know a lot of people listen to the podcast, and it started technically in January, but my story really started about a year ago from almost this day was when I bought my first plane ticket and originally made that one-way trip to California, which turned into a whole 2 months of traveling all over the country.
Wow.
A lot of time for self-discovery, which, I know is a huge thing for you. You've really stepped into your greatness, or as you like to call it, step into your bigness. And so I'm excited to talk about that today. Let's start off with, I know you just went on a trip relatively recently of, a bit of discovery, adventure, and learning more about yourself. Maybe share with me a little bit about what that was like and what that was and what it meant to you.
Yeah, so I'm guessing the trip you're referring to is the one I went on to Ecuador with a previous podcast guest of yours, Brad Finkeldale. And it was an amazing experience. And actually the second in kind of a series of, adventures that I've been on recently. The first one, we went to Liberia, which was just insane, transformative experience, but along the same lines in that it was like a voluntourism type event. And I went on it to help my friend who was helping to put on the event. He needed camera people. He's doing kind of an ongoing TV show about bucket list adventure events and things like that. So he needed kind of a behind the scenes camera person. But he's someone in my life that's been really encouraging me to, step more into the spotlight with my own messages. I've been doing web design for a really long time, and been helping other people kind of get their messages out into the world. And so he's really been encouraging me to figure out what is my message and what does that look like to put that out there. And that's something that kind of culminated in my Liberia trip and my Ecuador trip. Partly just because of the nature of the trips. We were meeting these new cultures and having these just amazing experiences. And there were a couple of things that happened in both places that really kind of embodied the whole concept of step into your bigness for me. One of them was being in Liberia. I'm a really big white guy, and it's just filled with black people, kind of shorter black people. I kind of assumed they would be larger people there, but they have this cultural thing where they kind of worship big people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really weird because not only were they all staring at me, but they were also all wanting to talk to me. So it
Right.
was almost like I was a star for something that, in a lot of ways, has been something I've kind of been ashamed of in the past. So I really had to like step into just this whole concept of being like, okay, well, I'm a big guy. I'm going to be seen no matter what. So I can either be ashamed of that, or I can really like rise to the occasion and just really like connect with these people and try to like show all of me and just really show up, basically. And so that's what that started for me in Liberia, and same kind of thing happened in Ecuador, where I got to really just deal with it. It wasn't the same kind of thing. It was more like um, it was different kind of challenges. I actually got confronted with more of my limitations as a large person. I had to learn how to like ask for help and to really um, get assistance and support from others, which has kind of been part of my message with Step in Your Bigness and Journey Inward. So it was really a teachable moment for myself. Um, and through all that, also going over there and seeing how other cultures live and meeting these amazing people. And we handed out water filtration systems to villagers in Ecuador and Liberia. And so it was a really giving type of event where I really got to also peel back the layers of myself and just kind of see who I am in these kinds of extreme situations and and how I can rise to the occasion.
This has been a theme that is kind of coming up, at least just for me, but also in a lot of the people that I talk to that have been traveling lately. I feel like travel encourages you or maybe provides you a better, whether it's mentality or environment, for you to really strip away and figure out, who are you regardless of any other, outside influence. And so it's been so interesting to hear. You're really not the first person in the last few weeks of people that I've interviewed where there's some sort of thing that happens when you travel outside of your home and really, outside of your comfort zone that
Mm-hmm.
allows you to really see what's underneath it all. And it's so neat. I'm wondering if maybe you could talk about just your experience with that and maybe what you learned about yourself as you've done this.
Yeah, that's actually something I've thought about a few times in the past. I've always felt like I'm the best version of myself when I'm traveling or when I'm doing um, um, like service projects and things like that. Um, and I mean, I think that's definitely true, but I'm also kind of narrowing it down. Like, what is the reason behind that? And I think it's because when we're doing these things, we're outside of our regular world. We're not worrying about the regular things that we normally worry about. For me, at least, it was a really good way to get present because I couldn't be distracted by movies and TV and whatever's going on in my life or the people, the responsibilities that I have and things like that. In a lot of ways, they're distractions from being present, being in this moment. And I'm the best version of myself when I'm truly present, when I'm present while I'm talking to others, when I'm having these new experiences that bring me into this moment, then I really truly shine. Um, so it and I think that's what like traveling and volunteer work does for a lot of people. Myself at least being the example that I'm using in this case, like just um, it helps me get in the moment.
Sure.
And I mean, it's kind of scary meeting new people and new cultures and trying to figure out how do I navigate in this world and having to do things throughout the day that I wouldn't normally have to do. I got to be like there all the time. I can't go, read a book or go, just do something that I would normally do to like kind of escape from the everyday experience. Um, so for me, it's a way to kind of get back to presence, and that makes me be the best version of myself. That's been my experience, at least.
Yeah, I mean, volunteering has also been something for me too. I sit on a board of directors for a nonprofit that we've been working to get off the ground, and I've also been with a youth group that I was in when I was a teenager. I've been volunteering with them for like the last 4 or 5 years, and I found that I'm at my happiest when I'm doing those things for others. And now you and I both know as freelancers, we're in very similar fields in how they function and operate. At some point it comes down to you've got to have the money to fund the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
Um, so where does that balance happen? Because if I could travel all day, every day, for the rest of my life, I'm sure I'd be ecstatic and I'd have a good time, but I'd also probably have no money left after about, 2 or 3 years. So how do people find the balance? I mean, there's people that are married, there's people with kids, there's, for someone like me, it's easy to just up and go, right? Like I have no real obligations other than like paying my rent. But outside of that, I don't have a whole lot, versus many people, at least listening into the show, might have, families, kids, things like that are holding them back from fully, diving into volunteering all the time or traveling all the time. What do you think we could do to kind of have those little bits and pieces of being present even in our everyday? And is there anything that you brought back from your adventures and from your experiences that you can still deploy while you're at home?
Yeah, that's a good question. Some of that stuff I can't necessarily. I'm in kind of a similar boat as you. Like I've been freelance, self-employed for quite a while. Pretty much my whole life. I've always kind of worked for myself, and there's a sense of freedom that kind of comes with that. In that I can just do whatever comes along, and it's not going to mess up my daily schedule, or I'm not going to have to talk to my employers, and kind of have to be like, well, okay, I'm taking the next week off. Will you pay me anyway? But the it's not your main question. It seems like is how do we continue that when we come back from these events?
Yeah.
And that's a tough one. I mean, I've dealt with that a lot myself. I've been finding I was traveling for maybe 4.5 months over this summer, just doing the Ecuador experience, doing these bucket list bus events, all kinds of stuff down in San Diego and all over the place. And when I came back from that, I was just so happy to be home. I was like, I'm not doing anything for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I just, I think in a lot of ways I have an introverted personality, but I'm able to kind of get around that by doing these trips and putting myself in the present moment and being able to do things like that. But like at my heart, at my core, I miss my home when I'm gone for too long. And I miss that solitude and that just kind of silence and just being able to be with myself. So it's a bit of I almost have to rebuild myself and my habits and my techniques for staying in that while I'm back home. It takes me a few weeks, like to get back into eating healthy, because sometimes I'm eating like crappy road food and going to the gym and doing all these just different things that kind of help me take care of myself in my day-to-day life. So it's a struggle for me as well. I've been really fortunate to I joined a men's group a couple of years ago, and it's been probably the best thing that has happened to me, because it lets me keep confronting all the stuff that I don't usually deal with every week, like the things that I want to do. I've got a support group that'll help me work towards them, and it'll help me keep accountable to myself and my own goals. And having that support every week that helps me kind of step out of my comfort zone and keep pushing the boundaries of my own success and my own abilities and my own comfort has been one thing that's really helped keep me in that energy throughout the year. And it's really about presence, I think, in a lot of ways. It's just about staying present as best I can. So continuing to do things that are uncomfortable and continuing to just face different things that come up about myself so that I can deal with them and keep trying to move forward. And other than that, I think I don't know that there's any particular set like regimen or thing that I would recommend. I just say, just keep doing things that you're uncomfortable with. I mean, that pulls me out, into the present moment just as good as anything else. And that's, to me, really what the traveling is about. It's just staying present.
Yeah. I mean, I have gone on, I really have to like go back in and count for this year, because I'm really curious. I'm about to book like 2 or 3 more flights before the end of the year, but I've been saying I'm somewhere between like 20 and 25 flights over the last 12 months. And I think it really has been, as long as I go somewhere 2 or 3 times a month, like basically every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
as long as I go somewhere, it really keeps me in check, and it kind of brings me down to a very grounded state. And so I know that you've got a couple things out there. You have this planner that you created.
Hmm.
You've got the journey inward is a big thing of yours, and step into your bigness. Maybe share with us a little bit about. I'd love to hear what this planner is. Where the concept came from, what inspired you to make it, and I've actually, I'm a huge fan of writing. Like every day, I always keep like a pad of ideas and things, and there's always some moleskin notebooks in my bag when I'm going to the office. And
Hmm.
just be curious to hear from you. Where did that planner idea come from, and tell everybody what it is.
Well, the planner, let me start with the journey inward. It's kind of been my own experience of um, delving within and trying to find out more about myself and who I am. And it kind of sprouted from the idea of um, the men's group that I was talking about earlier. Um, the biggest change in my life in that I've been trying to work towards specific goals, like eat healthier, take better care of myself, be more social, little things like that, like just aspects of my life that I want to keep working towards. And it's been really hard for me to do that on my own. And as soon as I joined this men's group and had these weekly group of people that help keep me moving towards these goals, I just like everything changed. Like it just became something that was sustainable that I could work towards so much easier than when I was trying to do it on my own. And the journey inward was kind of birthed out of this idea of, well, what happens after the event, whatever it is, whether it's a trip you're going on or a seminar or a retreat that you go to. Most people don't have this support system in place to help keep you moving towards whatever you decided you wanted to do at that event, right? Um, and I started trying to figure out, well, what would that look like? Like, how would that support system look? And the men's group that I've been part of, I thought, well, what if there was some online global version of that anybody could just join a group and get support around whatever they're working on, their personal growth, find other people that are working on health and fitness and other people that are, trying to grow their business and things like that, and just be able to connect with them every week and get, accountability and support around whatever goals that they have. So the journey inward was kind of birthed out of that idea, the idea of ongoing support, so that we can kind of create lasting changes in our lives. And the planner was sort of a physical version of that concept. Like I've always had a hard time keeping a calendar and dealing with that whole process. And most of my life, I was like, I got to keep everything in my head. And so I finally kind of turned a corner and decided to start using a calendar system, to start writing things down and I found like a freedom in that, like a freedom in that sense of structure, and that I didn't have to worry about what appointments are coming up later this week and things like that. So it's sort of like I recognized this was my weakness, and now I've been kind of turning it into a strength and realizing that it's something that, in all areas of my life, I could be writing down goals and breaking them up into smaller bite-sized chunks and pieces and kind of recording that and figuring out, well, what does that look like? Well, what does working on that this week look like? What's one thing I could do towards dating or being social or going to the gym or something like that? And before I know it, like that is a lifestyle that I've created for myself. Um, and I've got a support system that helps keep me on track with it. So the online community, which is thejourneyin.com, and then the planner, which is a physical version that kind of connects with the online community, but also lets you work it through on your own, something you can kind of carry around with you and, create goals for every week and just keep working it. They kind of work hand in hand. For people that want something more physical, they've got the planner and they can just carry it around with them. And then there's the online support system, which you can do by itself or you can connect with the planner however you want. And that's just kind of been my passion recently, is like figuring out how support works so well for me and wanting to turn it into a system that could benefit others in the same way.
Very cool. And I know how important it is to have that support system from, I've got mastermind groups, I have accountability partners.
Hmm.
I myself, I've hired a coach now 2 or 3 times. And I think for anyone listening in, a coach is a huge thing, and it's a big investment. And yeah, it takes a lot of money. And pretty much every time I've hired one, I haven't had the amount of money that
Yeah.
it takes to hire them. But
Hmm.
after I have hired them, what I've gotten on the other side of it has paid off very,
Hmm.
very quickly. So I'm actually excited because I'm getting ready to start with a new mentor as well. And but yeah, that planner sounds really cool because it's one thing to just have a notebook and write down some things here and there. It's another thing to have something that really guides you through looking at your week, looking at your day, what's going to happen in the next hour, what do I want to do by the end of this month.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great way to just hold yourself accountable without needing someone to, text you or call you every 10 minutes. Hey, you working? Are you getting better? Are you improving?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's such a simple process. I mean, everyone, like, I think people make it way more complicated than it needs to be. We don't have to figure out why we do things the way we do. It's not about, I don't think it's so much about psychology anymore. Like, yeah, the psychology is important, but that's more an obstacle. Like, I think it's just about doing it in whatever way you possibly can.
Yeah.
Just take one step, break it up into whatever you can do. And if you can keep doing that, it adds up. And eventually you've got a new lifestyle that was just created out of taking all these tiny little steps to get closer to whatever your goal is. And that's what the planner is. It's just simply, you know, writing it out, just being really practical about it. So I want to do this. Well, what does it take to do that? Well, what does that look like? Well, what can I do every week to get closer to that? And who can I find in my life that'll help keep me on track with that?
Yeah.
And it's just doing it. There's nothing psychological or bigger about it. It's just you do it, and then that's how you become it. That's pretty much it.
And I really like that this idea came out of your life experience. So I'm getting ready to launch a book that I just wrote, and I think that the best thing you can do is pull your own life experiences and pull together all the things that you've learned from other people, other mentors, anyone else who has been there. So, even in my own book, I'm quoting other people that I've learned from because it's not about being original or different. It's about just being you and figuring out what you are at the core and where it is that you want to go. Which kind of leads me into asking, what does Trevor 12 months ago look like, and what does Trevor right now look like, and where, what things have changed, and is there anything that you still really want to work towards?
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not finished by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't think I ever will be. I think I'm always going to be working on myself in some way or another. And I think that's important. I think that's kind of what life is all about. It's about growth and change and just continuing to refine yourself. And for me, yeah, a year ago, I was, where was I? I was about halfway through my whole project with the Journey Inward. I was doing web design. I was starting to step away from my daily life and start moving more towards Journey Inward. And I was just starting to figure out, well, what could that look like as a career? Like, what could that look like as an actual lifestyle? And I'd already gone to Liberia, so I'd had that experience, which was just amazing. Hadn't done the Ecuador thing yet. So I think I was kind of fresh on the whole concept of Journey Inward and the whole concept of step into your bigness. It just had just figured out that this is what I want to be doing. And yeah, a year later, I'm like, okay, I know what my message looks like now. I know what step in your bigness looks like for me and how I can put that out there. And I have a really good idea about Journey Inward. And I've built a planner. I'm still working on the community, and I've got like I can almost touch it. It's like, this is what I'm working towards, and I can see it like right over the horizon. And yeah, it's been a crazy journey. Just the whole thing. I came up with the journey inward a couple of years ago, and my friend Robert convinced me to get up on stage and do my Step Into Your Bigness speech maybe 3 years ago. It was the first time, and I'd never had any stage experience before that, like just speaking in front of people and in large groups of people and trying to put a message out there that might help them. So he just threw me out there and he said, just make something up, and we'll put you on camera. And I was working his event at the time, so I didn't have any time to prepare. I'm behind the camera doing the whole thing, and then I'm in front of the camera talking to like a room of like 50, 100 people, just telling them about like self-confidence and just this random stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I can speak to this because I've had experiences, but now I have to figure out, how do I speak to this in front of a room full of people? And it's crazy. I still can't go back and watch that video. Like, I look like a wooden marionette doll. Like I can't, but I have a hard time watching myself on video anyway. Until recently, the Ecuador video that I have, I actually enjoy watching that. I'm like, wow, I've grown so much just in terms of being able to speak to people and being able to be comfortable on stage. So I do feel like I've gone through a number of transformations over the last few years. If you asked me where I was like 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said I was totally stuck. It's just trying to figure out my life and everything. But I've had, gone through a lot of changes since then.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I know that a lot of people, both with video and audio, have challenges. I mean, when I first started a podcast, I remember like recording the first one and hearing my voice. I'm a videographer by trade, so me being on camera is nuts. I always tried to hide from family photos as much as possible growing up. But when you hear your voice, man, because it always sounds different being played back than you hear it in your head. And most of that's because how the sound vibrates off of your skull, which is pretty neat, actually. So for everyone listening, fun fact, your voice sounds different in your head because it vibrates off your skull. But yeah, I mean, I had so much trouble putting my voice out there, and look, we're on a podcast right now, and I think we're like 52, 53 episodes in easily. So this might be closer to like number 60 by the time it's out. And it's so strange to see how things can change over the course of the year. It's amazing to see how you can come to accept your insecurities, your downfalls, your highs and your lows. And so it's really cool just to see, how much one person can change over the course of a year, and how they go on to help others. Cause that's also something I'm seeing with you too, is, you have transformed so much over the past few years that it has allowed you to help other people make that same difference too. And that's really cool. Are there any sort of, just words of wisdom or lasting words you want to end on just to share with the listeners? I mean, some of them are 100% stuck where you were a few years back. Some of them kind of have an idea where they're going, but, can always look for more. And so, I'm always improving. I don't think that you ever set a bar. I don't think you ever hit that, because then the bar always moves somewhere else once you get there. So any just lasting words of wisdom that you want to spread with everyone, whether it's about, stepping into your bigness or, conquering whatever it is to get you out of that stuck phase.
Yeah. Well, I want to say two things. One is something I always love to leave people with, which is the answers are inside of yourself. Like, I've always found, instead of looking outside of myself for whatever answers I'm looking for, it's inside. We've always had the answers. We just have to start learning to trust ourselves and start listening to that inner voice that kind of guides us, and so that's always been true for me. So I always say, instead of following somebody else, or instead of looking to someone else to solve the problem for you, look within. That's been something that has really helped me over the years. And the other thing, you were just talking about your podcast. Like, that's such a prime example of exactly what we're talking about. Just this whole idea of how do we make lasting change in our lives? Well, it's really just through repetition. It's just we build something over and over again until we become natural and comfortable with it. And you've done 50 something podcasts at this point. And like you said, you were totally like just the whole concept of being in front of a camera at the beginning of that time. And now you're totally comfortable with it. I can see that you're comfortable with it, and it's great. And it's the same exact thing for anything. It's just repetition. Just keep doing it. No matter how you feel about it or how uncomfortable it is or what comes up for you, you just keep doing it. And that's it. It's just taking things one step at a time. And if it's too big of a step, break it up into something smaller. Do something you can do today that starts to build that repetition and starts to build that muscle. And before you know it, you're like flying through it, and it's just a part of who you are. And I think that's true with anything.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it always makes me think back to, and I've shared this story a couple of times with people on the podcast, that, when I first considered quitting my job, I was only making $30,000 a year, and I had no clue how I was going to replace that. But when you start to break down the numbers, it was no longer I have to replace $30,000 in a year. It was I have to replace $120 5 days a week, every week for 50 weeks. And it's really not so hard anymore once we broke it down even to the monthly. It's somewhere around like $2,500, right? But once you break it down to a very small goal, I could probably go out right now and figure out how to make $120 today, whether it's sell something that has been sitting in my room for so long, or offer to cut a few neighbors' lawns. I mean, there's so many things you could do, and I think you're absolutely right. Break it down into the smaller goal. You might not be able to reach the goal itself today, but you can definitely get yourself part of the way there. And
yes,
it's the best way to round off this episode. So Trevor, what is the best way for people to find out about you, maybe check out a video of your talk, and to check out the planner that you have online for Journey Inward?
Yeah, so go to stepintoyourbigness.com, which is my website, and kind of talks about who I am. And there's my talk in Ecuador is on there, and there's a couple of other links to videos and things on there, so you can find out more about who I am. And then the planner is at journeyinwardplanner.com. And you can actually buy it right now if you want to, but there's just a whole bunch of information on there about how that works, how it connects with the online community, and how that works. So either one of those, and then you can reach me through either one of those sites.
Awesome. Well, Trevor, it's been great chatting with you, and thanks so much for sharing your message and sharing your courage really to work on yourself and to improve and constantly look for better. And it's been great chatting with you, and I'm sure we'll definitely be keeping in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on this podcast. It's been great.
This episode of The Year of Purpose is brought to you by our brand new book, Life Rescripted. Find your purpose and design your dream life before the curtains close. If you want to be the first in line to receive a free digital copy from me, all you have to do is head on over to www.liferescriptedbook.com to find out more. I've discovered what I think is the world's most effective process to design your path in life. It'd be a shame if I didn't share it. In Life Rescripted, you will discover the #1 strategy for determining your life purpose and how you can start a new path today, the 5X life hack rule for accomplishing your dreams and designing your life on your own terms 5 times faster, the ultimate solution for fear and how you can leverage it right now to make this year your best year yet, and so much more. Reserve your spot in line to get a free copy at www.liferescriptedbook.com, and I will see you in the next episode.